Welcome to Biztech's Technology Show. Our guest for today is Adrian Bugaian. He's the delivery partner at Endava. Endava is a British technology company listed on the New York Stock Exchange with over 12,000 employees globally. Now, it helps some of the world's leading companies accelerate their ability to take advantage of new business models and market opportunities. Now, to tell us more, Adrian, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Brian, for having me.
Now, Adrian, for a start, give us an overview of Endava and its footprint in the Asia-Pacific region.
Right. So as you said, Endava is a publicly listed company. We provide IT services. So we enable our clients to succeed in the verticals that they are by using new gen technology and the ability to harness automation and data through our agile and multidisciplinary teams. As you said, we are 12,000 people. We're initially started off in Europe, and this is where our main market was. We expanded into the Americas in 2015, and since 2018-19, we've been operating in the Asia-Pacific market. We've opened two main offices initially in 2020 in Sydney and Singapore. And now we have more than 250 people in the whole region. We have delivery units in Malaysia and Vietnam that help service our Southeast Asian clients. And we also have offices in Brisbane and in Melbourne in Australia.
Now, could you give us a sense of, because you're still fairly new in the Asia-Pacific region, give us a sense of how you've helped some clients. One or two success stories of how you've really helped clients.
It's a very, very good question. So we approach helping our clients in different ways, right? In some instances, a client already has a defined strategy or has a defined product they want to build, and they need to accelerate the delivery of that product. So we can come in with knowledge and technical excellence to accelerate that delivery. In some parts, and this is where our ideation team comes in, we can help shape the idea that they have into something tangible for their business. So the teams that have technical and product strategy knowledge get involved with their business teams to define the roadmap of achieving the business outcome. And from that ideation and from setting up that roadmap, we help implement change in their business, sometimes in the whole industry. We've had examples like that, where the thing that we implemented for our clients changed the whole industry in the region. And all of that moving into maintaining that application or handing over the application onto our clients.
So how do you then, so you're new in Asia, you're here since 2020 or so, you're obviously competing in a space where the likes of Accenture and other consulting companies then operate. What is your sweet spot? If I'm a CIO, why should I hire you?
So we have a very good balance in between what's traditionally a consulting company and what traditionally is a technology company. Right? You go to a technology company, you get people that you have to embed into your organization and use them as firepower. You have consultants that come in and, in theory, can help you solve a problem. So where we come in is the combination of that theory with proven examples. We have a group of SMEs, some of them ex-CIOs, ex-CTOs of big global companies, be this in financial services or insurance or mobility, that can help solve real-life problems right now for organizations. And also by understanding the vertical, define what the next 5 years or 10 years for that company should be. And by bringing the world-class engineering in space, we can make that solution come to life. So the balance in between and having the knowledge inside the company is what makes us different.
Okay, so the other thing is also, of course, just like those large brand names that I talked about, Adrian, you guys are thought leaders as well. You've recently released a payments report, which you authored. Now that zeroes in on trends that are shaping the payment landscape in Southeast Asia. Could you just give us a sense of the methodology around it, sample size, countries involved, and so forth? And what was the thinking around this?
Okay, so we looked at trends that we see generally in the market. So what our clients or clients of our clients or the competitors are focusing on. We looked at the types of problems that are currently solved, but again, going to our expertise to connect the dots from different industries and different clients is how can those elements be used in moving forward, specifically in this case, in the payments landscape for the financial services. So we focused on Southeast Asia because it's a market that we understand more and more. There are some specific players in the market, but there's also global players that we have worked with for a long time. So we have insights in what their thinking is in the whole of the region. In terms of the evolution of payments and how we approached it, it's always helpful to look what happened in the last 10 years in payments, right? You see how it evolved and how we as individuals use technology. In talking to someone, how would they see payments 5-10 years ago? Nobody would have thought that just through the use of your mobile phone, sitting at home, you'd be able to do a transfer to someone, right, or from an individual to another individual, to be able to list something on an e-com marketplace and actually receive payment for it without leaving the space that you are in, and doing all of that within an hour. Right, I've had this example in-house with my wife when she said, look, in 2 hours, I've done something that would have taken maybe a week 5 or 10 years ago. So looking at those trends helped. The other part is understanding the general geopolitical side and social side. Right? In the last 5 years, mobile technologies have accelerated a lot in Southeast Asia, a lot. That's due to a couple of parts. The first is general increase in people of medium household income, which is a great thing. It's a fantastic thing for them as individuals and for the economies. And the second part is the evolution of technology itself. You have a myriad of mobile devices that you can buy. They're much more easier interconnected. Mobile technology is available, and that those two things combined have created a demand that didn't exist before, that created a new class of people, or have moved a group of people into that new class that allows them to tap into that market. So by analyzing these three parts, one is what we're working on, what we worked on, and what our clients are thinking about in the future. All of these three things combined helped us see, hopefully with our crystal ball, what the future of payments is going to be.
And what and with your crystal ball, tell us what is the future going to look like?
Oh yeah, right. So look, it's hard to define the future, but at the current state, as we see the evolution going, we see three main things happening for Southeast Asia. The first thing is going to be the more rapid evolution of cross-border payments, right? Real-time cross-border payment.
That's a thing that people don't really understand until they try to do it. The complexity around just ASEAN cross-border payments is immense. And like your wife said, it takes a week sometimes to do. Sometimes a week is a short period of time to get a loop sorted out.
Yes, that is very, very correct. But we had the same thing on a national level 10 years ago. Right? And if you saw how those stepping stones were put in place, right? In some geographies or in some countries, it was the government, the national bank demanded that we do not need to block our economy by waiting for money to be transferred in between two banks in the same country, right? It takes 1, 2, 5 days at times. How can we accelerate it, right? And the countries start developing all of it. And it helped a lot, those countries individually. It helped us as individuals to transfer money. So we had more control over our budget, but it helped businesses even more, right? By removing what's called the float. So when the money is transferred in between the two entities or reducing it, it keeps the economy well-oiled. And that helps propel the businesses themselves and the economy forward. Now, we live in a multinational ecosystem, right? A good part of the businesses are not set just in one country. They trade with other countries nearby. We as individuals travel to our countries. So the question is, how can we make this possible, right? Nationally, it's already happening. So what's the next step? So it all, for Southeast Asia, it all started in 2018 when Pay Now from Thailand interconnected with Singapore's, Prompt Pay from Thailand interconnected with Pay Now in Singapore. And that was a good first step. I used it myself a couple of weeks ago, and it is beautiful, right? You don't have to worry about how much cash you have. You don't have to worry about where that cash is. It in my pocket? Did I leave it in the hotel room? You can do the transfer instantaneously there from your bank account in Singapore into the merchant's bank account in Thailand, and everyone's happy, and it reduces a lot of headache. But as we see this evolving, do it now in Malaysia, interconnected with Singapore last year, and just the beginning of this year, there's a UPI's connection with between India and Singapore as well, right? So there's a clear indicator that countries want to interconnect. There is an interesting question mark that everyone wants to interconnect with Singapore, but that is potentially another angle to look at. It's not just the countries that they want to, but it's the ability, right? And we go into the technical abilities of country. Some countries thought about the next 5 or 10 years, how to make my digital strategy in such a way that allows me to do stuff that I might not need now, but will be of benefit to me moving forward. And this is the kind of things that we as companies do, we as a company do with our clients, be this financial institutions or in some cases governmental institutions. Right? What's your current digital strategy? I would check it and would validate it against their technical estate. Is there a gap in the digital strategy? Is there a way of accelerating some of those, some of the elements to get it up to par where it needs to be? And that's why it's very important to have the right technology partner by your side. I think we got derailed a bit, but that was the first point, right? So the cross-border real-time payments, ability of transferring real-time money between two entities cross-border. The second part is the rise of e-com, and it's been used quite a lot. If you look at the likes of Amazon, it's been available for years, right? So what's the whole new thing about it? It's the market itself didn't use e-com services a lot in the past, and that's due to the number of people that are underbanked or unbanked. So they did not have the ability to use digital currency. They only operated with hard currency. With the transition into digital currency, they are now new consumers of those markets, and they start to thrive. The likes of Lazada are a good example of a local e-com market. But what's even more important, it's the appearance of social media markets, right? The ability to go and sell something into an already existing platform that initially was created just to gather people around. The question is, well, you have a big group of people, how can you make it easier for them potentially to trade? And this is the rise of e-com.
And also, Adrian, and if I could just interject a little bit, and to take your point around the unbanked and underbanked, the rise of neobanks across the region is really going to accelerate this trend, isn't it? Because basically in markets like the Philippines, to use an example, you're going to have millions of new consumers that had never had digital currency before.
That is very correct, Brian. That is very, very correct. And we looked at that in depth, and we did partner with some neobanks back in Europe and the States. And it will be a big shift. This is interesting where e-wallets initially appeared, right? There were other non-financial directly players that wanted to fill that gap. They couldn't get a banking license, or they didn't want to get a banking license, but will enable the use of digital money in the region. Right? And that actually gets us into point number 3, which we see as big trends, is the super apps. Some apps or some ecosystems that started off focusing purely on mobility, Grab is a good example of that gradually evolved into having a wallet, having insurance, having buy now, pay later, and providing other instruments to their users. But the question still stays of how do you transfer that money into the digital world, right? If certain individuals work in a cash-driven society mostly, or their work is sporadic, so they don't have a steady monthly income that allows them to receive the money into their bank account? How do we transfer that physical money into the digital world? That's a question that we will touch upon in June when we have Seamless Asia here in Singapore. But super apps is the third biggest trend that we see continuing. Depending on who you talk to and in which geography, people might say, well, it's already here. And that's usually the case when you talk to people in a country like Singapore. Of course, for them, it's already, it's a given. There's so many super apps, there's so many wallets to use. For me, coming from Europe into Singapore was slightly overwhelming of the number of options you have when you do a payment. The first thing was how widespread the QR code was. And then seeing all those 20-something logos under the QR code that allowed you to do payment in different instruments, which I had no idea what they were and how am I supposed to use it. And coming from a technology company, that does raise a question mark. And even though we see those trends need to be unified with the ability of companies to progress. But it's also the importance of customer experience. Maybe we can touch upon that later on.
And Adrian, that's an interesting, very, very interesting point, because if you look at all sorts of industries historically, and you look back at whether it's the automotive industry or so forth, in the early days of the industry, you have a lot of players and then you have consolidation. And in Malaysia, there were like 50, literally, I think at the peak, maybe 50 digital wallets. Now, basically, you've got a handful. Because there's a consolidation, the customer experience is around the few key players. And I suspect that's one of the key things that will happen across markets in Southeast Asia.
Yes, it'll definitely happen. It'll bring a headache technology-wise to those companies, but it will happen. Right? We need to understand where the fintechs and those wallets all appear from. They appear from some form of a need from the end customers, right? They see a segment of users that want a specific service or want the provision of that specific service being done in a certain way. So that company would spin off, it would have its client base, but not big enough to maintain itself on the market. And then a bigger player or some other 3 or 4 players would say, look, by combining our powers into one, we can actually serve much bigger client base, intersell, right, and help our clients. What it usually causes, those are not planned strategies. Rarely does a company plan for them to be bought by someone else or merge with someone else. And then it becomes quite a headache for whoever the CTO of that merger is going to be. They wake up one morning and they have 4 different platforms with God knows how many databases, and they have to keep that afloat whilst be competitive on the market, right? If 10 years ago, innovation allowed you to be at the forefront of the pack, right now you have to constantly innovate to be in the center, in the middle of the pack. Innovation is already a necessity. It's not a luxury that some companies need to have.
Now, sorry, go ahead.
No, this was it.
Now, one of the things I want to touch on also, since we are in the conversation around payment, is the whole key and trends, is the whole trend around buy now, pay later, and how that's changing the landscape from a funding environment as well for individuals as well as businesses.
Right. So BNPL is and will be one of the key drivers for certain segments in the whole of the geography. It allows to serve underbanked individuals and businesses. Even though it has had its bumps throughout the last 2 years, but that only indicated the need for a regulation than the problem in the concept itself. If we look at generally at Southeast Asia, and as I said previously, the percentage of underbanked and unbanked people, some of them want to start a business, or they need access to certain services or goods that cannot be, they don't have the money currently to access. And that's the most used case right now. The future of BNPL in the region is going to be not necessarily business to consumer, but it's going to be in a business to business manner. If we look at industries like agriculture, where there is a quite a delay between the initial investment and the first revenues coming in, where you have to maintain the operational costs and reinvest back into the business. That delay is quite hindering to the business. Credits are not necessarily the best tool if they have access to a credit line. And this is where specific BNPL service companies might come in place that focus on a vertical like agriculture. If we take BNPL as an idea and we try and combine it with emerging tools like AI, even though AI has been around for a while, that allow to validate a certain business model before doing the actual contract signature between the two parties and allowing access to liquidity, validating the business plan, checking any background details of the individual or the business or the geography. That will allow the BNPL players themselves to reduce the risk of not getting paid on time, right, and keeping their business afloat as well.
Now, it's been a fascinating conversation, Adrian, but we've run out of time right now. Before we leave, though, what are your plans? What are Endava's plans for Southeast Asia in 2023, 2024?
So we have a plan actually for the next 5 and 7 years moving forward. We will continue growing in the region. We have quite a healthy client base in the region and both globally that have regional presence. One of the main ideas that we always operate with is to serve our clients from a close to their base perspective. So, and understanding our clients moving forward. So the plan for the next years, besides growth, is going to be to be closer to our clients and help guide them and help them accelerate their access into business and the verticals that they're in.
Adrian, thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
My pleasure, Brian. Thank you very much.
I'm Brian Fernandez, and we've been speaking to Adrian Bugaian, who's the delivery partner at Endava. And we have been on Biztechasia show. You've been watching and listening to this show, and you can catch it also on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. You will also be able to catch this on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.